The program for Belize conducted a study to find out more about the productivity of lowland tropical forests and what can be done to support sustainable management to increase commercial trees that we need for timber production. The project was carried out across 4 blocks of forests, where they did an inventory of commercial and non-commercial species as well as the dominant and competitor types of trees.
That has to do with how much you harvest and how much conservation practice you put in place. In our case, we use a 40-year rotation cycle, which means when we harvest a block, we close it, we don't come back until 40 years to give it time to regenerate. But is it possible to go in before that? And so that's part of the questions we're asking, and at the same time, how much more it will cost. Because we know, especially in northern Belize, most of the forest has been depleted. There's not sufficient timber, especially mahogany, for the sawmills in the north. And so this project is very important because it's trying to demonstrate how we can do it sustainably. And in this case, we've been basically looking at how we could put practices that will reduce the competitor trees and increase the growth of the commercial trees that we want for production.
The project shows that these forests with long-term concessions have stronger management plans in place, but those sustainable practices are not done across all timber extraction blocks. The short-term permits or the annual concessions are an area of concern.
That is an area where, admittedly, we need to work on. And so that is an area where the results from this particular project we will certainly be applying, especially for the 1-year licenses where for sure we've seen that there is a depletion in the timber stocks in these areas that have been issued under 1-year licenses.
Why do you think there is that depletion or that problem when it comes to the short-term concession?
Planning. We need to plan better around what it is that is extracted, and to start looking at ways in which we can apply the sustainability criteria to these forests. Now, these forests that are put under short-term licenses, these are within national lands. They aren't protected like forest reserves, for instance, or neither are they under private landholding. And so, in terms of the extent and the spread of areas that are under that type of management regime, it becomes a challenge. And certainly, that is one area in terms of the application of results from projects such as these. It becomes important.
Romero says that the timber industry stands to lose if long-term forestry management isn't implemented. Some commercial species are already depleted from parts of the forests. Their evaluation shows that it can cost upward of $10,000 more for sustainable practices to be put in place, but it's worth it in the longer run.
If it's not done sustainably, it means you'll harvest more and then you will make more money in the short term or in that year. But then after that, your forest is basically left as a skeleton forest. If your competitor trees are suppressing your commercial trees, then that forest will not regenerate the way you need it, and in the future you won't be able to get the commercial trees that you need. And that's essentially has been happening in the north. If you look at it, there are sawmill owners from the north that has been going all the way down south to get trees for their sawmills. Well, what that means is that we have not been doing it sustainably in the north.
The project was conducted in 4 blocks, including the community forestry project in Toledo called Kicheha. Chairman of the group explains how they've benefited from learning about sustainable forestry practices.
This project has helped our community in developing jobs, income to the community. Before, we know that there was no license that was being operated by communities. This community has chose to do their own thing, running their own operation in logging. So before we have like illegal loggers logging. Actually, when we do logging before, we actually cut those trees at this height. But right now, through this management plan and so, we lower the cutting of the stump at least 6 inch and above. Yeah, the lower we go is 6 inch. Then that's how we see that we are doing a proper logging than before. And before we actually people do legal cutting and they just sell it like that, and it's not sustainable. Just cut like any size of trees, and it's not the right way.
The FAO implemented the project with funding from the German government and support from 3 agencies. It is part of an initiative in 3 other countries.
Belize is pretty much advanced in its program to do to safeguard the protection of these forests. I think what needs to happen now is kind of a shift in the view that we have to focus more on the trees which we are going to harvest in the future. If we want to do any silvicultural treatments or anything to ensure the productivity of the forest, then we need to look after these, identify these future crop trees. Maybe we can protect them during the harvest. That is certainly crucial, because if we damage them now, then they would start to rot and we would not have anything to harvest which has value later. So, and then we can also see if we can do something, if we can liberate them from their competitors so that they grow a little bit faster than they would do normally without our intervention.
Reporting for News 5, I'm Andrea Polanco.